Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, hello, my name is Caitlin Elliott. That's Riley back there, he's just a pain in my butt sometimes. And today we are going to be talking about the case of, are you ready for it? Jacob Wetterling. Now this case had me down in a rabbit hole for years because back then, you remember the Amber Alert app or whatever you used to have on your phone would show you all these like missing like children or people or whatever. And I found this one time because it was from Minnesota, and I was looking at it and I was like, what are you chewing on? And I was looking at it and I was like, like this is interesting. Like I wonder if this will ever get solved because it involved like a child. I was like, oh, he's been missing for such and such years, And turns out the case ended up actually being solved. And when I found out about that, I was like super thrilled. So I ended up researching the case, and as I was researching the case, I saw I found some things in there that I hadn't known about from the public, like from the news and stuff. So I was reading onto it. I was like, oh my god, like this is nuts. This is wild. Like, because at the time I remember when they announced like that his case was solved, and I was just like, oh shit. So that was pretty interesting for me to find this out. So like I wanted to cover this case for so long, and finally I was able to get the research done for it, and I was like, hey, yeah. So today we are going to be talking about the solved kidnapping of Jacob Wetterling. So again, so this had me down in a rabbit hole, and there's some cases like you research, and as you're researching it, you just end up like just crying. And one of those cases that I researched that ended up it just broke my heart was the case of Jacob Wetterling. And it was just so hard for me to research because it's just so awful. It really is. And this person got away with it for so long. And it's like, I feel bad for the families, I feel bad for Jacob, and I feel bad for like everyone involved. Like, so today we're going to be talking about his case, the kidnapping of Jacob Wetterling. And so the kidnapping, it took place just after 9 p.m. on Sunday, October 22nd of 1989 in Minnesota. Now, Jacob Irwin Wetterling was born on February 17th of 1978 in Long Prairie, Minnesota. And his parents' names were Jerry Wetterling and Patty Wetterling. And he was one of 4 children. So there was his older sister, Amy, his younger brother, Trevor, and his younger sister, Carmen. So there was four children: Amy, Jacob, Trevor, and Carmen. So Jacob, he was 11 years old at the time of his disappearance. A lot of 11-year-olds, when I was 11, I liked to play all the time. I liked to be outside, run around. I have 2 younger sisters, and one of my younger sisters is 4 years younger than me. So we used to go out and go for walks, ride our bikes, swing on the swings, jump on our trampoline, that type of stuff. So that's basically what Jacob did on October 22nd. And now, remember, in October, usually it can get a little bit, chilly, especially in Minnesota. But it wasn't, so I'm losing my voice because I've done so many videos today. But it wasn't too terribly cold. And, he was with his younger brother, Trevor, who was 10. He was a year younger than him. And he was biking home with him from a convenience store in the area called the Tom Thumb Convenience Store. And it was only a couple blocks away from their home on Kiwi Court. So they lived on a place called, a road called Kiwi Court. And like I said, it was not far away from where the convenience store was. So the convenience store was right here, and his home was right down here. So it was meow, 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 real simple, maybe a 5-minute bike ride, if that. So they had also invited their friend, his name was Aaron Larson, who was also 11, to come with them to the store. and they had traveled to the store because they wanted to rent a video. Now remember, this was back in the times of like, we're talking about like Blockbuster and Video Night and all that. So that, like, where they lived, like, they didn't really have a Blockbuster, and you know, VCRs was like the only way you could really watch videos back then, because there's no such thing as like a DVD player. There was no such thing as like Netflix, Hulu, no streaming stuff, so you actually had to go out and buy VCRs, or you could rent them like from Blockbuster. So that's what they did. They went to the store to rent a video because this town wasn't big enough to have a Blockbuster. So all three boys, they actually lived in a place called St. Joseph, Minnesota. That's where Jacob and his family were living. That's where all of his friends were living. So they were just very used to it. So it was around 9 p.m. on that day of Sunday, October 22nd, 1989, that changed everything for the Wetterling family. And it said that, like, Jacob and his brother were really close, and this like, what happened to Jacob affected his family, like, for years. And it's so sad for me to hear about this and to even talk about it, because it was just, I remember, like I said, I remember hearing about it in the news, and I was just torn up. But, so, what happened was, an armed man said he was wearing a stocking cap, and he had approached the boys, and he said that he had unloaded revolver, but he told the boys to throw down their bikes and basically lay down on the ground. So, like, lay down and ditch. So they did because they were scared to death because this guy had a gun. They didn't know it wasn't loaded, you know, but they were terrified. So they listened to what he said. You know, they're whimpering, they're crying, they're like, what the hell is going on, right? So afterwards, he started asking, like, each of the boys their age, which is so weird. Like, why would you ask them, like, how old are you, you know? You know, one of them's, Jacob's brother, he said 10, Jacob said 11, their friend said 11 as well. So after a while, you know, the guy, he starts looking at each of the boys, starting to figure out which ones he wants, and then he decides to take Jacob. So he told Jacob's brother to run into a wooded area, and he was told if he looked back at the abductor, he was going to be shot. So Jacob's brother, you know, takes off like a bat out of hell. He starts running. He's like, no. So the two remaining boys end up being Aaron Larson, the friend, and Jacob Wetterling. So out of the two boys, like I said, he picked Jacob, obviously, or we wouldn't be doing this case, and he told Aaron to run away. And like he did with Trevor, the brother, he threatened him, saying that if you turned around to look about what's going on, I was going to shoot you in the head and kill you. And so Aaron takes off running, right? And according to Jacob's brother and the family, like, this was the last time anybody ever saw Jacob. Imagine that being the last time you ever see your family member, is when they're 11 years old with a man with a gun pointed at them and telling you that they're going to be shot, like, you're going to get shot and you have to run away, and the next thing you know, your brother's being taken away by some man that you've never met before, all because you wanted to go out and buy a video to watch. Like, what in the hell is wrong with people? Like, why do people think in their heads that it's okay to take children? And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do cases, like, on my YouTube channels, because I want to get information out there as to why people do the things that they do, and get, like, just talk about stuff so that these people's cases don't go unknown and unnoticed. So, the investigation started right away, and it was said that on January 13th of 1989, this was 9 months before Jacob was even taken, a 12-year-old boy, his name was Jared Sherrill, he was kidnapped, sexually assaulted, and physically assaulted by an unknown man. And this brought some attention to Jacob's case as well, because the way that this boy was taken and abducted and sexually assaulted and all that stuff, it was very similar to what happened to him. So the guy that took him was an unknown male. So an unknown male or unknown suspect is basically someone who isn't known to the children or to the family. They don't know who this was. And and everything down to a T was extremely, extremely similar to what had happened to Jacob Wetterling. Ain't that some shit? So the guy used the gun. He released the boy and he told him to run and not to look back or he would be shot. That's exactly what happened to Jacob's brother Trevor. And this incident actually happened coincidentally 10 miles away from where Jacob Wetterling and his brother and their friend was stopped at. Yeah. Huh. Suspicious, huh? So, now we're going to be talking about the person of interest. So there actually ended up being a person of interest in the case. And it didn't come to the light or to the public until May of 2014. So this was, 25 years, right? Yeah, 25 years after what happened to Jacob's abduction. So finally they found like a person of interest. Like, oh shit, okay, cool. So in May 2014, police announced that they were re-looking at a series of attempted child molestations around where Jacob went missing. Now, if you don't know what a child molestation is, it's basically someone who, like, touches a child, rapes a child, like, and, like, does sexual acts towards a child, which is, in itself, absolutely disgusting. And it's just, it's horrible to even think about it. But there's people out there that do that. And, unfortunately, most of them target, like, young kids. And it just does, it's so disgusting to think about. Like when I was whenever I was researching this case and all, and I read about that this guy that they were looking into had a history of sexual molestation towards children, I was like, yo, what the fuck? I was like, oh my god, like what is wrong with people to make them like sexually attracted to children? Oh my god. So, between the summers of 1986 and 1987, there was 5 teenage boys around that area, which was 2 to 3 years before Jacob even went missing. So 5 teenage boys were actually abducted and attacked, and by like an unknown man. And there was actually like no suspects brought up in the cases, and nobody was ever arrested. But after interviewing the victims in the 2000s, a unknown web sleuth, which if you don't know what web sleuth is, it's basically someone that searches these cases and tries to solve them through like stuff that like regular detectives usually don't think of. And so they told investigators that the culprit behind all of the molestations of what had just happened to these 5 teenage boys could have been behind what happened to, like, could have been connected to Jacob Wetterling's case. And I mean, what they're saying could make sense because his abduction actually occurred 40 minutes away from the other crime scenes. Now, ain't that some shit, huh? Ain't that some shit? So now, we're going to be talking about this real nice piece of shit man. And I'm going to tell you right now, when I first, like, whenever I found out about this case being solved and everything, and they brought up this guy's name, I wanted to kill him. I didn't even know him, and I wanted to kill him. I was like, look, I'm not a violent person, but if you do acts like that to a child, to what was just told, what I'm going to tell you guys, to a child, oh my god, like, oh, this case had me, like, up for nights, like, it was just so irritating. So, in October of 2015, a man named Danny James Heinrich was publicly announced as a person of interest in the case. And he was actually questioned 2 months after the abduction. And even a DNA sample was taken from him. But then he was released. Which had me so upset because they literally had the man behind the whole thing. And they just didn't know it. And they let him go. That type of shit just, it always makes me so mad. They did that with the freaking Golden State Killer, and they're doing that with Danny Heinrich. Like, come on now. God. So, then, they took his DNA, obviously, right? So, they put it in the system, and get this. His DNA actually matched the DNA taken from Jared Shirell's, remember the guy whose name I cannot pronounce, Shirell's case back in like January 1989. This was took place like a couple months before Jacob went missing. Now ain't that some shit, huh? So it matched his DNA from that guy that raped the little boy. So they were like, okay, so that solves that case. Now we have to figure out about what happened to Jacob. So unfortunately, there was the statute of limitations, and it wasn't available for the kidnapping in Cold Spring because it actually expired because the case was so old. Poor Jared. Poor Jared Sherrill. I feel bad for him. If you're watching this, Jared Sherrill, I feel so bad for what happened to you. I ain't trying to make fun of you or anything. Like, this is a very serious thing, and I would never try to, like, insult you or hurt you or anything like that. So I feel so bad about what just happened to you. So, there was actually a search warrant out for Danny, and they went into his home, right? So they go into Danny's home, and they had actually decided that they were going to search his house to see if they could find anything in connection to Jacob's case. And what they found in his house was horrifying, disgusting, and disturbing. So, they found not just one, not just two, but mountains and boxes and piles of just pictures of child pornography. I think he even had a computer at this time that even was filled up with images of child pornography. And we're talking about like little children, like 5 and up. Teenage boys, preteen boys, like Jacob. I sat there whenever I read this and I was like, oh my god, what a disgusting pervert. Like, that's so freaking disgusting. Like, oh my god. I can only imagine, like, how terrified everyone must have been whenever they found out about this. Like, imagine that being your neighbor and you find out he had, like, a shit ton of child pornography in his house, and you had children that lived next door to him. I'd be like, oh my god, I'm moving. My name is Thea. Like, ugh, disgusting. So, yeah, so he was arrested on October 28th of 2015, and I'm gonna tell you right now, what a disgusting pig, and anyone who has any type of sexual fantasies towards a child is a literal piece of shit, and you deserve to rot in hell and in prison. Just saying. Just saying. I think that's fucking disgusting. So, Danny, he had actually organized a plea bargain with, the police officers on September 1st, and on that day, he actually decided that he was going to lead authorities to a burial site. And this, like I said, this was back in 2016. So this was 27 years after what happened. So from there, you know, they started digging up where he told them to look at. And they found Jacob's clothing he had been wearing the day of his abduction, and human remains that had belonged to a child. Oh my god. So, like, whenever I saw that, and whenever I remember, like, I don't know about you guys, but I remember it being all through the news that they had solved his case. And I was just, like, so excited. And I realized that they had found his remains. And I was just heartbroken. Because it was just so sad. It was horrible. It was horrible. So, the remains contained Jacob's clothing that he had been wearing the day of his abduction. And it was found in a pasture in Painesville, which was 30 miles away from Jacob's home and the abduction site. So this was actually near where Danny was living at the time in the year of 1989. So this was nearby his house. So this dude literally traveled 30 minutes to like find a kid to abduct and kill and rape. Like, what the fuck is wrong with people? So, like, why didn't anyone put two and two together? Like, anyone put anything involving him together? Like, he lived this close. Ew, are you farting? Like, he lived that close to where Jacob was. There was a pasture, and it could easily have been like hiding human remains. Like, Jesus criminy. So, on September 3rd of 2015, according to DNA and dental records, the body that Danny Heinrich had pointed out to authorities was that of Jacob Wetterling. Yeah. Heartbreaking, seriously. Then Heinrich, he actually pled guilty to 1 out of the 25 charges of the child pornography. So he also agreed that he would testify the details of the crime, and he starts telling everybody in court what he did to this poor child. And like, I'm thinking to myself, his parents are there listening. Jacob, he's up in heaven, like, listening, like, what? He's just talking about what he did to this poor kid. And I'm just like, oh my God, what is wrong with you? His brother's probably there too. Oh. So, he had kidnapped Jacob. And then he handcuffed him. And he drove him to a gravel pit near Painesville, Minnesota, where he then started to molest him, which, if you don't know what molesting is, it's basically he was raping that poor boy. He was touching him, sticking his... I don't even want to get into it, but Jacob, afterwards, he was crying, and he was just like, can you just let me go, please? I'll do anything. My parents will pay ransom. Just please let me go. And that's when Danny, he just pulled out a gun, and he shot Jacob right in the head, and it killed him instantly. An 11-year-old boy. He shot and killed an 11-year-old boy and killed him instantly. After that, he went back to the site, like, one year to the day of the murder, after he had buried Jacob, and he had noticed that Jacob's clothing was starting to stick up out of the pile, and it was like showing his jacket that he had been wearing the day of his abduction. So he decided that he was just going to rebury Jacob. And I was just like, yo, what the fuck is wrong with people? What makes you think that this was a good idea? Like, why would you go and murder a little boy? Like, why would you go and... like, literally. They had him. They literally had him back in 1989. Jacob could have been freed. Jacob could have been saved. And he wasn't. And it just upsets me. And I'm sure it was frustrating to authorities whenever they found out about this. And they arrested him. They were like, oh my God, we could have caught this guy so long ago. But we didn't. And I'm sure it was frustrating, because for me, I was so pissed off, because I was like, this guy did this disgusting shit to little boys. Nasty. So, after that, Danny, he was like, well, they'll let me go. I won't get charged with anything. Psych. They ended up charging him, and he was sent to prison for 20 years to life. So, he deserves to be in there for life. He deserves it. I'm going to say it. He deserves it. He deserves to die in prison. Anyone who does that to children deserves to die in prison. Like, fucking disgusting. Like, the poor little kid. Like, all you're trying to do is just go and watch a movie, and you end up getting kidnapped by a freaking child molester. God. So now we're going to be talking about the legacy that Jacob Wetterling has left behind for his family, for us, and for everybody in the world. So, 4 months after Jacob was abducted, his parents, named Jerry and Patty Wetterling, remember we were talking about them, and earlier we were talking about it, they founded the Jacob Wetterling Foundation. And in 1994, the Jacob Wetterling Act was actually passed and named for him. And it was the first law to ever institute a state sex offender registry. So basically, it was them trying to say, like, if you have any sex offenders in the state of Minnesota, Wisconsin, wherever it may be, they need to register fully as a child molester, and it needs to be known to you know, like how, you know how like sometimes you can look up on like in your neighborhood and everything, and look up online, see what type of like like sex offenders live nearby you, and you're like, oh, I didn't know he was a sex offender. I'm moving. You know what I'm talking about? Like, so they made it easier so that you had to register as a sex offender if you were a sex offender. So, and it was the first law to ever do so, which is fantastic. It was a big step forward. So, in the year of 2008, the Jacob Wetterling Foundation ended up becoming the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center. And it was actually created to educate the public about who takes children, how they do it, and like what each of us can do to stop it. So basically it was like to inform people that there are people out there that want your children and will do sexual acts to your children and kill them. Basically people out there who are predators and prey on small children, just to inform them, because back then a lot of people didn't know about that type of stuff. So it was very important. You know, it was great to know about it. So there was also a bridge in the Mississippi, by the Mississippi River near St. Cloud. I think it's St. Cloud, Minnesota. I don't even know, dude. St. Cloud, Mississippi. And it was actually named the Bridge of Hope in Jacob's honor. So he ended up leaving behind a big legacy. Even though unfortunately he did pass away, he is still remembered, and he is not forgotten by those who have loved him and cared about him. So, my thoughts on this case. Again, I'd said I've been following this for years and years and years and years, back when they had that Amber Alert app, and I found out, I was like, oh shit, they had a little boy that went missing. Like, oh my god, it's terrible. So, my thoughts were that Danny, the fact that he doesn't get life in prison for what he did to Jacob is absolutely fucked up, and he deserves to die in prison. And I feel awful that Jacob's family has to deal with that for the rest of their lives, the fact that he murdered their son and he gets to live. I mean, granted, he's behind bars, but he still gets to live. He doesn't get the death penalty. And I personally believe that anyone who molests children, they deserve to die in the worst and awful way, because it's just, you don't do that to kids. Like, y'all deserve to be castrated, get your penises cut off and fed to someone. I don't fucking know, but you deserve something. So that is the story, the horrible, horrible, heartbreaking story of Jacob Wetterling, and how it was solved by his own killer. I mean, it's pretty interesting to me, honestly, that got solved by him. But that's all I have for you guys today. Please like this video, comment, subscribe, share this with all your friends. Let me know what you think about this case down below in the comments. And I'll be seeing you guys next time. Bye!